Every year, hundreds of thousands of students waste hours and hours studying SAT math, only to lose 50 points or more on the exam due to one very common mistake. And often it's not because they don't know the material. It's because they don't know how to take the test. Now, if that sounds like you, don't worry, because I'm going to tell you exactly what that mistake is and how to avoid it. And if you find this video helpful, make sure to like it and subscribe so you don't miss any study tips. So let's go ahead and dive into this mistake that costs students hundreds of points every year. The number one way that students lose points on the SAT is by rushing through questions. And I know what you're thinking. How can you possibly lose points if you're going fast? Isn't that the whole goal? Well, no. You definitely want to pace yourself during the SAT. If you skip over key details, you could end up solving the wrong problem and losing valuable points. Let me explain this with an example. Let's look at this problem. A store owner wants to increase the price of each sweater by 20%. If sweaters currently sell for $25, what will be the new price? Now most people would look at this prompt and immediately start solving. They see an increase, they think percent increase, and they might even know the math behind it, so they quickly solve for the new price. But if you were to rush through this question, you might have accidentally misunderstood the prompt. You might have thought, okay, there's a 20% increase, so we're looking for 20% of 25. But if you had read the question more carefully, you would see that the prompt says to increase the current price by 20%. And this means that we're not looking for the increase itself, but rather the new price after the increase. With this clarity, you would correctly approach the problem and arrive at the right answer, saving yourself from a careless mistake. Imagine you're rushed and you solve the problem correctly, but you write something else. Sure, you got the right answer, but the SAT graders are not psychics. They don't know what you were thinking. Students will message me saying, I got a 13 out of 13 on the quiz, but I only got 1200 on the real thing. What happened? And this is almost always the reason. They rushed on the actual exam. So now that we know how important it is to read the prompt carefully, let's go over some tips to make sure you never miss a detail again. Number 1. Always read the last sentence first. As I mentioned earlier, many mistakes arise from misreading or misunderstanding the question. This is especially true for longer, more complex questions. To avoid this, always read the last sentence first. By doing this, you give yourself context. You won't be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And you also won't miss any key details. Number 2. Circle or underline key numbers and units. Our brains process visuals better than blocks of text. So to keep your focus sharp, circle or underline key numbers and units. This helps you quickly grasp the core components of the problem. Not only does this help you during the initial read, but circling key terms shows the reader exactly what you're focusing on, making it easier for the grader to follow your logic. Number 3. Plug in simple numbers when possible. One of the toughest parts of the SAT is that the questions often involve abstract concepts. For example, you might have never dealt with a logarithmic function in the real world, so seeing the question, you might not have an intuitive sense for what's going on. And this makes the problem seem daunting. In situations like this, try plugging in simple numbers. Even though we still wouldn't understand what this means in the real world, we would at least have a number, and that number might provide clues about the solution. And this is especially helpful for function and algebra questions. And I've actually seen this exact strategy on a real SAT. Instead of blindly guessing, ask yourself, does my answer make sense? Even a 5-second sanity check can catch mistakes. For example, if a question asks for the area of a triangle and you get a negative number, you know you've made a mistake. Also, if you're working on a grid in question and you fill in all of the boxes, but your answer choices only have room for 4 numbers, you know that you've made a mistake. Additionally, if you're working on a multi-step problem, look back at each step. Ask yourself, did I use the correct operation or formula here? Trust me, this takes seconds and can prevent costly errors. Finally, practice timing with small sections. Now I've already mentioned pacing quite a bit, but this is such a big issue for SAT math that I want to give it its own section. When you're under pressure, your breathing becomes shallow, your hands get sweaty, and you start to panic. And this can lead to careless mistakes. So to prevent this, you need to get used to taking timed sections of the SAT. The ideal time for each section is 20 to 25 minutes. And you should use this time to practice your timing. This way you won't feel overwhelmed when taking the real exam. And even if you go a little bit over on these sections, That's okay because it's good practice to finish and then review the questions you missed. And finally, you should consider using a mistake log. Now I've talked about this in another video, but it's such a powerful study tool that I had to mention it here. Every year, countless students repeat the same mistakes on the SAT. They don't learn from their mistakes, so they make them again. To break this cycle, I recommend keeping a mistake log. After every practice set, write down what mistake you made, why it happened, and how to avoid it next time. Reviewing your own errors is one of the fastest ways to improve. For more SAT tips, check out my channel. I will see you next time.